everybody, episode 17 of the podcast. It is Swimming America, the Outdoor Sports Podcast presented by Betfred Sportsbook. It is Friday, June 2nd, 2023. People, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody is having a great day, and I hope everybody is ready for a fun, fast-paced episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast here on a Friday. Here's what you need to know about today's show. So Wednesday night was obviously the NBA draft deadline. By now, you've hopefully listened to Thursday's show where we reacted to everything. Who's staying? Who's going? What does it mean for college hoops? Well, on today's show, what I plan on doing is unveiling what is basically my final way too early top 25 of the offseason. Now, there may still be some portal stuff, but the rosters are basically set. So I'm going to give you my way too early top 25, talk about the teams that won at the portal and or won at the deadline and lost. What does it mean? From there, we will take a quick break and wrap with Aaron Right, Aaron Wrong. This should be a pretty straightforward, quick show, and it's in large part because I have given you plenty to listen to throughout the week. Tuesday, we previewed the NBA draft deadline as well as the SEC meetings. Wednesday, we talked Caleb Love. Thursday, we recapped the NBA draft deadline. And of course, today, full reaction with my way too early top 25. So if you missed any episodes this week, make sure to go back and listen. I should mention as well, if you're into the NBA draft stuff, it's really going to ramp up on this show over the next few weeks, but also on the College Hoops Daily feed. Me and Zach Kroll, just search College Hoops Daily Podcast. We have previewed all of the big stories in the NBA draft so far. We talked about Victor Wembanyama at number 1. We talked about the debate about number 2. And we also talked about a little bit about Anthony Black as an NBA draft prospect. So make sure, find the College Hoops Daily Podcast if you want more NBA draft coverage. And trust me, there is plenty more coming on this feed as well. With that said, let's not waste any more time and let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, I just told you, Thursday was the NBA draft deadline. If you wanted to play college basketball in 2023, 2024, it means that you had to have removed your name from the NBA draft prior to Wednesday night at midnight. So Thursday show, we did a full recap of who's in, who's out. And today, what I want to do is update what I guess you would call my way too early top 25. But at this point, I don't think it's way too early. I just think it's a top 25 because there really isn't all that much that's going to change here over the next couple months before the season starts. Now, look, we'll get a few transfer guys here and there. But for the most part, top 25 is set. And so because of it, I want to reveal and I want to share my top 10. I'll give you my whole top 25, but we're going to take an in-depth look at the top 10 as well as some other teams that stand out going into the season. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any more time. And by the way, I will also share the Betfred Sportsbook odds on all of these teams. Not going to lie, may have already placed 1 or 2 futures bets for next year. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any more time. Number 1, an AT's not really any more way too early top 25. It is, drumroll please, it's the Duke Blue Devils. And listen, by the way, Duke is number 2 in the Betfred Sportsbook at plus 1,100. I've had Duke at number 1 basically since about the second or third week of the offseason and haven't really seen that much reason to change. Remember, this is a team that finished the season hot. Now, they lost to Tennessee in the second round of the NCAA tournament, but prior to that had won 10 straight games, I believe. They had won the ACC tournament where they beat Miami, who of course made the Final Four. But here's the catch with Duke. They returned their top 4 scorers off last year's team. Kyle Filipowski, leading scorer and rebounder. He's back. Tyrese Proctor, second leading scorer. He's back. Mark Mitchell, third leading scorer. He's back. And then the big one a few weeks ago, their starting point guard, Jeremy Roach, tested the NBA draft waters. He's back. 4th-year player. Played with Paolo Banchero and all those guys a few years ago on the Final Four team. He is officially back. And so when you look at this Duke team, I don't know what else there is to say. In this new era of college basketball, at least for right now, experience matters and continuity to me. That was the theme of this year. You look at UConn, 3 starters back from last year's team. Miami had a bunch of guys back. San Diego State had basically everybody back off last year's team. And so I look at it, and this is the new world that we live in. Duke brings back pretty much everybody. I would also say this, NIL, and we'll talk about it, or we talked about it last night with Zach Edey, but I think it's important to note, NIL brought a lot of guys back that I think would have been drafted had they decided to test the waters. Kyle Filipowski, in my opinion, would have been drafted late first round, early second round if he had even tested the NBA draft waters. Same with Tyrese Proctor. Instead, they are both back. Duke is my favorite. Duke is the #1 team in the country entering the 2023-2024 college basketball season. Number 2 in AT's way too early top 25. It is, I believe, the team outside of Duke that you could make the best argument for as the favorite going into next year. And by the way, you know who believes they're the best team in college basketball? The Betfred Sportsbook, which has Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk as the favorites going into next year at plus 1,000, 10-1. Kansas is your favorite. And Kansas is an interesting deal because we know about Hunter Dickinson, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But why so many people are excited about Kansas is that really it was only about 2 or 3 days before the NBA draft deadline when a guy by the name of Kevin McCullough, a player who started on last year's Big 12 championship team, announced he was coming back for a 5th year. He had transferred in from Texas Tech, tested the NBA draft waters after the season. Nobody really expected him back. Now, I should say when he transferred in from Texas Tech, it was last offseason, so he was a starter on last year's team. Nobody really expected him back, and then boom, out of nowhere, he decides to come back. So you have 2 starters back next year. DeJuan Harris, another guy who played in a Final Four in 2022, and then also Kevin McCullough, who was a starter on last year's team. So you have those 2. You have Hunter Dickinson, the best player that entered the transfer portal this offseason, 2-time All-American, monster down low. I think he could be like a 20-13 kind of guy at Kansas next year. And they also did a great job in the transfer portal. Nick Timberlake, 43% three-point shooter out of Towson is coming in. Arterio Morris, former McDonald's All-American, is coming in. And I look at this Kansas team and I say, darn, man, that is a really good team with experience. We've talked about it many times before, but Bill Self's best teams often are the ones with veteran players. Bill Self isn't a one-and-done guy. Bill Self is a give me 3 or 4 years to mold a guy type coach. He's going to have one of his oldest teams next year, and I think they're going to be really good. Hunter Dickinson, 4th-year player. Kevin McCullough, 5th-year player. Nick Timberlake, 5th-year player, on and on and on and on and on. Kansas is number 2 in AT's way too early top 25. Number 3 in the way too early top 25, I believe, is the only other team you could argue at number 1 in the country. They're at 13-1 in the Betfred Sportsbook odds. That's the Purdue Boilermakers. And listen, everybody knows where Torres stands on Purdue. Not a big fan. It's not that I'm not a big fan of Matt Painter. I just think he gets a pass from the national media way, way, way too often. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he is coming off the worst 3-year stretch in the NCAA tournament, lost as a 4 seed in 2021 in the bubble to North Texas, lost as a 2 seed or a 3 seed, to St. Peter's in the Sweet 16 in 2022. And then, of course, lost as a number 1 seed this year to Fairleigh Dickinson. And so I've talked a lot about Matt Painter. You guys and girls know where I stand on him. But what I will just say, bottom line, end of story, is this. With Zach Edey returning, they basically bring back everybody. Now, they lost a guy or 2 off the bench, but all 5 starters are back. And I can criticize Matt Painter for whatever. But at the end of the day, this is the reigning Big Ten regular season champ, Big Ten tournament champ, with the National Player of the Year back, as well as all 5 starters. And if you want to tell me they should be the favorite going in, I would have no fundamental objection to it. It is worth noting, I've seen a few people mention this as well. Remember, Virginia, 2018 tournament, lose to UMBC, first number 16 seed to ever beat a number 1 seed. Virginia comes back and wins a national championship the following year. Don't know if Purdue is going to do that, but they will have the opportunity. It's because Zach Edey is coming back. Number 4. So I think that first 3 is pretty set in stone. Number 4, I don't know if I'm being a homer or not. I have UConn at number 4. And you could talk me into them at 7, 8, 6. I think they're a top 10 team for sure. I don't really know what to do with them. Because at the NBA draft deadline, they did lose a 3rd marquee player, Andre Jackson, who was kind of the glue guy, do-it-all, whatever. That's on top of the Final Four most outstanding player, Adama Sanogo, and, of course, Jordan Hawkins, who's going to be a lottery pick. Here's the thing, though. If you look at UConn, they still do bring back a lot. So Tristan Newton, who really emerged late as a point guard for this team, 10 points, 4.5 rebounds, almost 5 assists per game. He officially announces that he's coming back at the deadline. On top of that, let's also not forget that you have Alex Caravan coming back, 9 points per game, was a star in the NCAA tournament, 40% three-point shooting. And Donovan Clingan, who was just an absolute beast as a true freshman a year ago, he's back for another season as well. And so, like I said, I think you can make a compelling case that those three, with a 3-man freshman class, a couple other marquee returnees, Samson Johnson, a guy who's kind of banged up this year, Hassan Diarra, that's a team that, to me, they're going to have the talent to make another deep run, another Final Four potentially. Will they get there? I don't know. But I have UConn at number 4, and we'll see how I feel. 2 starters back, and really 3 of their top 6 off of this year's national championship team. I trust Dan Hurley, and I do think they are probably one of the teams in this top 10 that still has a piece to add when it's all said and done. This is a team that is recruiting Cam Spencer, the transfer from Rutgers. We'll see if it ends up happening. Cam Spencer is, I think Adam Zagoria reported, scheduled to visit UConn next weekend. So we will see. He's down to 4 schools. You add Cam Spencer, I think they solidify themselves as a top 5 team. UConn, by the way, same as Purdue, 13-1 in the Betfred Sportsbook. Let's keep it going at number 5. And number 5 is actually the 5th best odds in the Betfred Sportsbook at 14-1. That's the Arkansas Razorbacks. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? I'm not sure. Nobody can stop Eric Musselman in the portal. Now, it was an interesting NBA draft deadline day for Arkansas on Wednesday, and we talked about it. Jordan Walsh left as expected. But the interesting real piece of news was that Ron Holland, the number 1 high school player in America, Arkansas thought they were getting him. Like we're going to talk about it in Aaron Right, Aaron Wrong. And I didn't even get it from anybody at Arkansas, but I know for a fact that staff, they had the uniform made, they had the nameplate made for the locker, they had the dorm room picked out for him, and he ends up committing to G League Ignite at the last moment. So I think it's easy to kind of sit there and say, oh, what happened? I don't know. But what I know is Arkansas still has a team that's good enough to make a Final Four and compete at the highest level of college basketball next year. 5 transfers coming in. We've talked about them a million times, but L. Ellis, Louisville's leading scorer, Tremont Mark, who I think is a great 2-way player. Khalif Battle, really high scoring guard from Temple, bigger guard as well. Jeremiah Davenport, 3-point shooter, and then Keon Menafield, who I think could be a breakout star next year. So 5 freshmen or 5 transfer guards with Trevin Brazil, who I think could be an SEC player of the year type talent. You add it in with a 2-man high school recruiting class. This is a loaded team. So at this point, I've talked about Arkansas enough. You don't need me to keep going through their roster again and again. I have Arkansas at number 5. Yes, they are good enough to make the school's first Final Four since 1995. And if everything breaks right, how about that? On the 30-year anniversary of their 1994 national championship with Corliss Williamson, maybe this is a team that's good enough to do it. Again, let's keep it going. Number 6. This is a team that really moved, in my opinion. They really moved, in my opinion, over the last couple days, and I'll take it a step further. They're sitting at 30-1 in the Betfred Sportsbook. So Betfred and I disagree. Love Betfred, but we disagree on this one. I got the Creighton Blue Jays at number 6, and Creighton is a very interesting team, and we've talked about them a ton. They lose Arthur Kaluma to the portal. They lose Ryan Nemhard to the portal, 2 starters. But there was some friction in the locker room, and I think they probably, maybe it's a little addition by subtraction without them. They got 2 players back at the NBA draft deadline. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists per game. And also Trey Alexander, a really talented guard, 13.1 points and about 42% three-point shooting. So in my opinion, you have one of the most versatile guards coming back, one of the most versatile centers in college basketball coming back. You also have added Steve Ashworth out of the transfer portal, and you have Baylor Shireman coming back for a 5th-year, 2nd year at Creighton after transferring in last offseason. So what you have is a great starting 5. Everybody kind of complements each other. The only concern is obviously they're not going to have a ton of depth. You worry about injuries or whatever. But this is a really good team. And remember, by the way, they're coming off an Elite 8 appearance. It's not like they lost in the first round of the tournament. They make the Elite 8. are a game away from a Final Four. I think they got as good a chance as anybody next year to make a run to the Final Four. Let's keep it going at number 7. Back to the Big Ten, the Michigan State Spartans. And I know Michigan State, by the way, they're 18-1 in the Betfred Sportsbook plus 1,800. I know they technically had 2 players testing until the end, AJ Hogard and Jaden Akins. But this is a team that basically, I think they knew everybody was coming back really from about, I would say, mid-April on. Tyson Walker, a really talented guard, all Big Ten guard, announced early he was coming back. And so you look at this team. I think this is the most talented team that Tom Izzo has had since 2019, 2020, the tournament that was canceled because of COVID when he had Cassius Winston. There isn't much to say. This is a really talented group. They also had a couple really important freshmen for next year. Xavier Booker is a 5-star, top 5 prospect. I believe he's like the highest rated prospect they've signed in like 20 years coming out of high school. Jeremy Fears is a good point guard that I think in year 2 will turn into a star for this team. Michigan State is number 7. They're at 18-1 in the Betfred Sportsbook. Let's keep it going. I'll try to be a little bit quicker here. Number 8 in AT's way too early top 25. It's the Marquette Golden Eagles at plus 2,200 in the Betfred Sportsbook. So when I look at Marquette, I'll just say this. They lost a guy named Olivier Max Prosper at the NBA draft deadline. But even despite it, they returned 4 starters. And remember, it was Marquette, not UConn who won the championship, not Creighton who made the Elite Eight. It was Marquette that won the Big East regular season title and the Big East tournament title. Well, they returned 4 starters off last year's team. That includes the Big East Player of the Year, Tyler Kolek, about 14.5 points, 7.5 assists per game. This is a very talented basketball player and a very talented basketball team. The pieces fit. And I'll tell you, I'm not as down about losing Omax Prosper as a lot of people. He's a really good player, don't get me wrong. But they have the pieces on the roster internally to fill his spot. Stevie Mitchell was a bench player who is now going to start. I have Marquette at number 8. Number 9, maybe the most interesting story in college hoops. I have the Florida Atlantic Owls, FAU, at number 9. Florida Atlantic made the Final Four. Here is maybe the craziest stat in all of college basketball. They did not lose a single player this offseason. Now, Janelle Davis and Elijah Martin, their 2 best players, did test the NBA draft waters, but they both came back, which is a win in and of itself. Both of those players could have gone to the portal. They could have gotten more guaranteed money. Both decided we're going to test the waters, but if we don't go pro, we're coming back. Here's the crazy part, though. Even with those guys back, they didn't lose a single player to the portal this offseason, meaning player, and I think they only had 1 player graduate. So like player 10, 11, 12, that wasn't even playing this year, decided I'd rather come back and be a part of this than go somewhere else. That's a testament to this school. That's a testament to this program. Now, listen, I get that it's hard to do better than 35 wins, which Florida Atlantic had this year in a Final Four, but this is a deserving top 10 team. I have Florida Atlantic at number 9. Finally, at number 10, and then we'll rip through 11 through 25. Number 10, I have another team that made the Final Four. That's the Miami Hurricanes. Miami, very interesting offseason. They did lose Isaiah Wong, the ACC Player of the Year, but they bring back Nigel Pack, and they bring back their star forward, Norchad Omier, who is just a monster down low. On top of that, did a very good job in the portal. They replaced Isaiah Wong with a kid named Matthew Cleveland, who was the leading scorer and rebounder at Florida State. I think he is going to make a big step at Miami. But overall, most of the key pieces off of last year's Final Four team are back. They bring in a transfer. Miami's good enough to win the ACC again. And oh, by the way, remember, 2 years ago, they made the Elite Eight. So there was nothing fluky about this Final Four run this year. I have Miami at number 10. Really quickly, I'm just going to rip through 11 through 25. And anybody notable or interesting I'll talk about. Number 11 is Tennessee. Tennessee got some weirdly interesting news. Josiah Jordan-James, a 5th-year guy, is coming back. They found out that at the deadline. That's in addition to Santiago Vescovi, Zakai Ziegler. So if you love Tennessee, if you hate them, a big chunk of their roster from last year is coming back. Also, crush the portal. Dalton Connect from Northern Colorado, 20 points per game, is coming in, as is Jordan Gainey and Chris Ledlam, a transfer from Harvard. Tennessee is, again, going to have a really good, really deep team. Number 12, Arizona. We've talked about Arizona the last couple of weeks. Added Keyshawn Johnson, added Caleb Love, added Jaden Bradley. I have them at number 12. Do worry a little bit about the shooting, but this is a team that should win or will at the very least compete for another Pac-12 title. Number 13, Houston. Don't think there's a ton to add here. Just a really good across-the-board team. Now, keep in mind with Houston, they are going to the Big 12 this year, so obviously a step up in competition, but they got good news at the NBA draft deadline. Their best player, Jamal Shead, is back, as is LJ Cryer, a Baylor transfer who is testing. Houston at number 13. Number 14, here we go. I have Kentucky at number 14. And I think a lot of people are mad at me for having them that high, mostly Kentucky fans. Listen, I get the frustration. What I would say is this, and I've said it all offseason. John Calipari, historically, has been at his best with NBA-level talent and NBA-level guards. DJ Wagner is an NBA-level guard. Now, I am projecting that Antonio Reeves, the returnee, is going to stay at Kentucky. He can, of course, enter the transfer portal because he's a grad transfer. Cal still has some work to do. I'm not as down on them as most, and I'm curious to see if he can get some guys at the portal deadline. Listen, I've been critical for not doing more earlier, but again, I get that there's only so much that you can do when you have 4 top 5-star freshmen coming in. So I have Kentucky at number 14. I'm not as down on them as most. 15 is a really interesting one. Texas A&M basically returns everybody off of a team that finished second in the SEC last year. I could see them winning the SEC regular season. I could see them as a 2 seed. Texas A&M is at number 16, number 15. Number 16, maybe the biggest mover in my poll over the last couple of weeks is the Villanova Wildcats. Villanova has crushed the portal. We talked about it on Thursday's show. Tyler Burton, formerly of Richmond, 19 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. He transfers in, as does TJ Bamba, a Washington State's leading scorer from a year ago. Lance Ware from Kentucky transfers in. We're going to find out, can Kyle Neptune, their head coach, is he a coach? Because they got a roster that is loaded and ready to go. For those of you paying attention, by the way, that's 4 top 16 teams in the Big East. Villanova at number 16. 17, Gonzaga. We talked about them all offseason. They added Ryan Nembhard. They added Graham EK. We will see what happens with them. Don't think this is the best Gonzaga team, but Mark Few, to his credit, added some guys late. Number 18, North Carolina. I'm buying. Armando Bacot, RJ Davis are back. They killed in the portal. Harrison Ingram from Stanford, Cormac Ryan from Notre Dame. And oh, by the way, they added 5-star Elliot Cadeau this week. North Carolina at number 18. Number 19. How about Bronny James's USC Trojans? Love Bronny, but it's really about the fact that the number 1 high school player in America, some consider to be the number 1 high school player in America, Isaiah Collier, is going to USC. Their leading scorer, Boogie Ellis, is back as well. USC at number 19. Number 20, my boy Mike Effett Woodson and the Indiana Hoosiers. Added Mackenzie Mbako, added the transfer Kalel Ware from Oregon, and also bring back Xavier Johnson as his starting point guard. Indiana at number 20. 21, another team that crushed the portal, the West Virginia Mountaineers. They added Kirk Kriisa from Arizona, Jesse Edwards, a double-double machine from Syracuse, Raekwon Battle, a big-time scorer from from Montana State. And they might not be done. Olivier Kongwa from Tennessee is still in the mix for them. I have West Virginia at number 21. Think Bob Huggins has a really good squad. 22, Alabama. We've talked about them. Lost Charles Bediako. I'm a little worried about them, but they come in at number 22. Number 23, Sean Miller and the Xavier Musketeers, cleaned up in the portal. Davion McKnight from Western Kentucky. Quincy Oliveri from Rice. A couple of really good players there, along with Zach Freemantle, Desmond Claude, and Jerome Hunter, who are back from last year's Sweet 16 team. Remember, they made the Sweet 16. 24, San Diego State, last year's national runners-up. Lamont Butler, among others, is back. They have some work to do in the front court, but I have San Diego State at number 24. And number 25, St. Mary's. They earned a 5 seed this year, lost to UConn in the second round, but they returned 4 of 5 starters. Number 26, Illinois. Great day at the NBA draft deadline. They are number 26. Maryland, 27. St. John's, Big Rick Energy, Rick Pitino, 28. Baylor, 29. Auburn, 30. Again, my top 10. Duke, number 1. Kansas, 2. Purdue 3, UConn 4, Arkansas 5, Creighton 6, Michigan State 7, Marquette 8, Florida Atlantic 9, Miami 10. And for all of your updated odds, go to the Betfred Sportsbook. All right, fun segment. What it is time now for is to take a quick break. And when I come back, we are going to finish the week. Aaron right, Aaron wrong. That was a fun segment. Time to switch gears. Aaron right, Aaron wrong coming up next. Show in a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome back our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook, and the Betfred Sportsbook app. The NBA playoffs are here, and nobody has you covered quite like Betfred. By now, you know Betfred's story. Started in 1967 in the UK. Over 1,200 shops in the UK. They have since come to the United States and made a major splash. They are not only the presenting sponsor of the Aaron Torres podcast and all things Aaron Torres media, but also the Cincinnati Bengals, the Colorado Rockies, the Denver Broncos. And what I love about Betfred Sportsbook is that nobody takes care of their customers quite like Betfred. You've seen the Betfred Sportsbook suite at Bengals games. It is hopping. We have sent listeners of this show to Denver Broncos VIP tailgates. Betfred bettors have thrown out first pitches at Colorado Rockies games. Again, nobody takes care of you like Betfred Sportsbook does, and here is what they are doing for the NBA playoffs. How about this for a deal? Bet $50 on any game, all playoffs long, get up to $1,111 in free bets. Here's how it works. Download the Betfred Sportsbook app, bet $50 on any game. You automatically get $111 in free bets. But beyond that, here is what else Betfred does for you. They're going to give you up to $200 in insurance for the first 5 weeks that you're a Betfred customer. So maybe you make a bad pick. We all do. We've all been there. Trust me. You followed my picks in March Madness. It happens. So you bet 200, doesn't work out. Get 200 insurance for the first 5 weeks that you are a Betfred customer, equating up to $1,111 in free bets thanks to Betfred. Again, nobody takes care of you like Betfred does. Love working with them. They are the presenting sponsor of the Aaron Torres pod. Tell them Torres sent you. Download the Betfred Sportsbook app right now. Hey, hi, back. Gonna be back. Final segment of the show. Final segment of the week. So good to be back. And I do want to go ahead and wrap with America's favorite podcast segment where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. We do it every week to wrap the show and wrap the week here on the Aaron Torres pod. By now, if you've been listening to the show, you know the deal. If you haven't been listening to the show, now is as good a time as any to find out. Yes, I stole this bit from my buddy Colin Cowherd. Colin does where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong every week. And I decided to bring it to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast to give you my best and worst takes of the week. Why am I doing it? It is because, listen, if you listen to this show, you already know when I get stuff right, nobody likes to tell you how smart they are more than your boy Torres. Torres said this. Torres said that. Torres said, should have told you. Listen, Torres, I never shut up. And so we decided to bring Aaron right, Aaron wrong to this podcast again. One, to end the week every week, kind of a funner, lighter segment, especially this time of year. There's not as much going on in sports. But two, also to hold your boy accountable because Torres gets a lot of stuff wrong. So let's not waste any more time where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. Where Aaron was right. Since even before Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, was named the head coach of Colorado, I have said some Power 5 is going to hire this guy, and it is going to be a grand slam home run, no doubt about it, hire. Well, fast forward, and Coach Prime has not coached a game yet, but I will just say this. This guy is already making headlines and already creating buzz in even a way that I don't think I fully appreciated even when I was touting him as a legitimate Power 5 head coach. Why is that? Well, if you saw this week, a lot of the college football early season schedule has come out. Fox has its big noon kickoff. That is obviously Fox's biggest game of the week. And who do they have in week 1? Colorado at TCU. Who do they have in week 2? Colorado hosting Nebraska. So in Fox's biggest time slot, they have tabbed Colorado for 2 weeks in a row to be in that time slot. Could have picked some Big Ten teams, could have picked Michigan, Ohio State, whomever. They decided to go with Coach Prime. Oh, by the way, week 3, when Colorado hosts Colorado State, well, they play Colorado State. I don't know if they host them. That is going to be ESPN's Pac-12 After Dark game. Again, I've said it a million times since Coach Prime got hired in late November, early December. We're going to find out in September how good of a coach he is, how quickly he can flip this roster. But this guy is a content machine. So excited to see him at Colorado. And I was dead right. I've been saying since day one he was going to create some excitement, and he has done that at Colorado again. Their first 2 games will be the big noon kickoff here on Fox in early September, where Aaron was wrong. So listen, this is one I think I might be wrong on, and I'll be really happy if I was. But I have said for weeks and months, I didn't think there was a scenario in which the Pac-12 as a conference does survive. Here's the thing, though. If you listen to Thursday's Aaron Torres pod, at the end of the show, I did a big segment on Big 12 expansion, Big 12 realignment, and I'll be blunt. Up until about 4 or 5 days ago, I thought for sure if the Big 12 expanded beyond the 12 that they currently will have going forward, I thought it would for sure be the 4 corner schools in the Pac-12, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, and I thought that would be the death knell of the Pac-12. Funny thing happened, though. While I do think Colorado is on its way out to the Big 12, as I said on the show the other day, if you look at the rest of the legitimate expansion candidates in the Big 12, I think UConn is a real candidate. I think Gonzaga is a real candidate. I think San Diego State is a real candidate. And as I said, the focus seems to be in the Big 12. Football set. We got TCU. We got Kansas State. We're not going to get significantly better in football. So let's focus on these big-time basketball brands and make sure to shore up basketball. So going forward, we cannot be left behind in basketball. With that said, though, that's all a long-winded way of me saying I think the Pac-12 might survive. I don't get the sense Utah wants to go to the Big 12 where they're going to be competing with their cross-state rivals BYU. I don't get the sense that if Arizona leaves, necessarily it means Arizona State is going to leave. And I don't get the sense that Oregon and Washington have any interest in the Big 12 because they're waiting for that Big 10 invite that they are hoping is coming. And so this is all a long-winded way of me saying, I thought for sure we were eventually going to get to a situation where the Pac-12 died at some point this offseason. I think it just might survive, although I think it'll certainly be without Colorado, and it's going to look different. I think the Pac-12 might survive, at least for the short term. Where Aaron was right. Let's go from the Big 12 to the SEC. SEC league meetings were this week, and the one thing I was right about was this, is I have said for years, people ask me all the time, Torres, how do we get our arms around NIL, around the transfer portal? How do we keep players from going to 3, 4, 5 schools in a year? How do we keep schools from tampering with our players? What do we do? And I've said for years, the only answer is to eventually make school athletes employees. Now, listen, it's not what I grew up with. It's not what you grew up with. It's not your grandparents' college football or college basketball, but that is where we are eventually going because it is the only way to stem this and to keep, frankly, to keep the lawyers out of college sports as we know. So I don't love it. I wish there was another way. It feels weird to me, but I think we're eventually going to get there, and it was reconfirmed this week at SEC meetings. Nick Saban said at some point we might as well just unionize this thing and make it like the NFL. Hugh Freeze said we're basically the NFL right now, just without concrete contracts. Think we're going to get there probably within the next 10 years. It's going to be weird, but that is the only way to calm down college sports as we know it. Where Aaron was wrong. What was the other big takeaway from the SEC league meetings down in Destin this week? It's that Greg Sankey announced on Thursday afternoon, the SEC is going to stick with 8 league games for the 2024 season. Now, as we discussed on Thursday's show, I don't think it's for forever. I think eventually we're going to get to the point where we do get to 9 league games because ultimately it's what the fans want. It's what the TV partners want. It's what most of the schools want. I saw Missouri come out in favor of a 9-game league schedule. I saw A&M come out in favor of a 9-game league schedule. You go on and on down the list. So I thought for sure, this to me felt like a no-brainer. Like it felt like it wasn't even going to be a debate, not even a question. We're going to 9 league games when Texas and Oklahoma get to the SEC in 2024. But for at least 1 year, we're going to stick with 8. And I think that's kind of a loss for college football because I think we need more than one rivalry game for a lot of these schools. Texas has 2 great rivals in Oklahoma and Texas A&M. I want to see both of them every single year. Auburn has 2 great rivals, Alabama and Georgia. I want to see them both every single year. Georgia plays Auburn in Florida. I want to see them every single year. And so you go on and on down the list. I think we eventually get to 9, but this felt like a slam dunk, no doubt about it. And I guess we're not there because Greg Sankey said at SEC meetings in Destin this week, we're sticking with 8 games for 2024. Where Aaron was right. So listen, Kentucky fans, I hate to belabor the point, but I have said for 8 weeks now, John Calipari, you got to start moving in the transfer portal. And we've gone over it again and again and again and again. So forgive me. I'm not trying to be that guy that's always trying to say, oh, Torres was right. He gets everything right. No, because I get a lot of stuff wrong. I'm talking about it right now. But on April 5th, I said, like, everybody's moving here. Auburn's making moves. Tennessee's making moves. Arkansas's making moves. Villanova's making moves. North Carolina's making moves. And John Calipari's just kicking his feet up. Oh, no, we got this. Well, fast forward, it is now June 2nd, and unless something has changed since I recorded this on late June 1st, Kentucky only has 7 scholarship players going into the first week of June. Listen, the portal is just a different beast. You can't spend 2-3 weeks deciding, do we want to offer? Do we not want to offer? Should we evaluate this kid? Is he the right fit? No, you got to move, and you got to move quick, or somebody else will. I hope this is a lesson to John Calipari because you cannot wait in the portal. I told Kentucky fans 8 weeks ago Cal was moving too slow. It is now June, and Kentucky has 7 scholarship players. Where Aaron was wrong. So I'll be blunt. I've kind of given up on Villanova as a college basketball power after this past season, right? Jay Wright makes the Final Four 2 years ago in 2022 in New Orleans. He ends up retiring. Kyle Neptune takes over, and it's a disappointing year. And I get the idea of, well, you know, I mean, how much can you really blame them? They had a couple guys hurt last year, blah, 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 blah. But I kind of said, like, I mean, they lost to Portland, okay? They shouldn't have been as bad as they were. But I bring it up because I was kind of just out on them. And then this offseason, they cleaned up in the portal. We talked about it earlier on today's show. We talked about it on Thursday's show as well. TJ Bamba from Washington State, Hakeem Hart from Maryland, Tyler Burton from Richmond. I don't know if Kyle Neptune is the right guy. I almost said Kyle Burton, who I think is a NASCAR guy. Tyler Burton, Kyle Neptune. I put them together and Kyle Burton. Anyway, I didn't really know if he was the guy, but listen, he's done everything right in the portal. And as I said, Villanova is a legitimate top 20 team going into next year. I'll say this. We're going to find out if this guy can coach because he has got a squad going into 2023, 2024. And I really like what I see out of that group. Finally, where Aaron was right. So we've talked about this topic a lot the last 3-4 weeks, but Ron Holland, 5-star player, number 1 in America, decommits on April 28th from Texas. Remember, number 1 player in America, sticks with Texas through Chris Beard, through the arrest, through the firing, then decides in late April that he is going to go and reopen his recruitment. The day he reopened his recruitment, I said, I thought it'd be down to the G League Ignite program and Arkansas, with my early lean being G League Ignite. Well, on Thursday or Wednesday or whenever it was, he officially committed to G League Ignite. But finally, that brings me to where Aaron was wrong. I really can't take credit for that because while at one point I did think Ignite was the favorite, all signs pointed towards Arkansas, which we talked about on last show. And I think Arkansas, I'll be blunt, I thought he was going to Arkansas. I think Arkansas thought he was going to Arkansas. And at the last minute, G League Ignite swooped in. We talked about it the other day, but listen, I can't really take credit for anything because this guy, in my opinion, and in my sourcing and people I talked to, he was essentially signed, sealed, and delivered to go to Arkansas. So I got this one dead wrong. My first hunch was either Ignite or Arkansas. Then I went all in on Arkansas. Fast forward, and he eventually ends up with Ignite. The good thing is Eric Musselman has cleaned up in the portal. He's done a great job, and they ain't slowing down anytime soon, even without Ron Holland, by the way. All right, I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. You talk about a loaded week. I mean, come on. We just had Memorial Day last week, and how about your boy Torres pumping out 4 shows after the holiday weekend? Monday, previewed the NBA draft deadline, or Tuesday, previewed the NBA draft deadline. Wednesday, reacted to Caleb Love. Thursday, reacted to the draft deadline, Big 12 expansion, all that good stuff. And now our Friday show is complete. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead and give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. Also, the College Hoops Daily feed. We are doing NBA draft previews. Make sure to subscribe there, and we'll probably drop even 1 or 2 of them on this feed as well. That's all for today's show. It is time for me to get out of here. It is time for me to enjoy a June weekend. So with that said, thank you guys and girls for listening, and I will be back on Monday. Shout out to Torn Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. God, was I right in that JJ Redick argument. I'll be back Monday. New episode of Aaron Torres Pod.